Welcome to the Nonprofit Voice, which is brought to you by Nonprofit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we'll sit down with nonprofit executives, consultants, and technology partners to learn more about the latest tactics, strategies, and trends in the nonprofit sector. As always, you can download all Nonprofit Voice episodes on Apple, Google, and Spotify. To be the first to know of new episode releases, follow us on social media and subscribe to our e-newsletter.
Welcome back, everyone. Mark Becker here with Cathexis Partners. Going to have a great conversation today. I think that could go either way, but I think it's going to be a great conversation with a bunch of Salesforce experts and just kind of talking about the state of Salesforce and nonprofit cloud and nonprofit success pack and where things lie. So I thought it'd be really good. I saw Watt Hamlett put out this great bit of research survey results. He'd reached out to a bunch of different folks doing implementations and shared those findings, and I thought it was really interesting. So wanted to have a few folks from a couple different agencies of different sizes and different focus areas in the nonprofit space to kind of give State of the Union from our perspectives. So let's go round robin and do intros. Matt, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Matt Devine. I'm a nonprofit Salesforce consultant with Cathexis Partners. I've been with Cathexis for just over 10 years now, pretty much playing every role imaginable as far as moving a nonprofit into the Salesforce platform, from discovery and scoping, training, data migration, and everything in between. So it's great to be part of this conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks. Daniel, how about yourself?
Yeah, Daniel here, Daniel Dibble at Canvas Cloud. We're Salesforce partner, implementation partner. I have been in the ecosystem for well over a decade and co-founded Canvas Cloud in 2019.
Nice. Rob.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Mark, for having us. My name is Rob Jordan. I'm the CEO and founder at Idealist Consulting, and I've been in this space almost 20 years now, which is a little frightening, actually, when I think about that. Mark, you knew me when I had hair, I think.
Yeah.
I had hair when I met you. Watt, same thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
I like to think I look better without hair.
You look great, and I had different colored hair. Mine wasn't as gray as it is currently, so we all are aging. And yeah, to that point, last but not least, Watt.
And hi, I'm Watt Hamlett. I'm founder and principal of Watt Hamlett Consulting, and my focus is primarily advisory services for nonprofits in the Salesforce ecosystem. Have been in the ecosystem, I think, 15 years now myself, and yeah, like others of you have seen a lot of change and growth happen in that time, and here we are in 2024 with yet more change and growth. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and I remember being at probably NTCs back in the day, and Convio summits, and coming across Rob and Watt, and more recently Daniel, and yeah, just having these kind of conversations at our booths and in having coffee, and how things have changed and how they've stayed the same, right? But yeah, Watt, for folks listening, talk a little bit more about the survey you put out and any initial thoughts, and then kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I think just to set the background, so a little over a year ago, Salesforce announced a new nonprofit cloud, and this is a new set of solutions that would essentially take the place of everything that had come before for nonprofits from Salesforce. And so I was curious at the 1 year mark, how's that going? How much has the market adopted this new solution, and what were perspectives on it from people who were close to it? And to my knowledge, Salesforce has not itself put out any data along those lines. And so I went to the folks that I felt like had the best kind of front row seat to all of this, which was the firms that do Salesforce implementations for nonprofits. And so this survey ran for about a month between February and March of 2024, and ended up having 75 different firms in the space respond to it, and just ask a number of questions related to their work with and perspective on the new nonprofit cloud. And so I'll just jump in and share some of the highlights here as some kind of get our conversation stimulated. So the first question was, is your company willing and ready to take on nonprofit cloud work? And the majority of companies said yes, they are. There was a little bit of variation in terms of the bigger companies were all 100% committed to nonprofit cloud. As you got down to smaller companies, there was a little bit more reservation. And then the next question was, okay, so for those of you who are doing nonprofit cloud work, where are you with that work? And from that survey sample of 75 firms, there were 17 who said they had actually completed implementations. So within the first year of nonprofit cloud, and that represented 35 total new implementations of nonprofit cloud. And then the next question was for those who haven't implemented it yet, but who are in progress with implementations. And there were 26 companies, so about 35%, who said they hadn't gone live with any nonprofit cloud projects yet, were in progress, and that represented around 79 in progress implementation. So, if we extrapolate a little bit from the sample size and based on the numbers, I'd say they're probably between live implementations and in progress implementations. Probably we're talking in the low hundreds at this point. Maybe a couple of hundred of projects. So it is getting adopted within the sector. Those numbers are still very small compared to the total number of organizations that are on NPSP, and so any nonprofit moving towards nonprofit cloud will still be among the early adopters. But I'd say in general, the attitude among these consulting firms is positive, and the work is underway.
So we have a couple hundred that are on NPC or in the process of that, compared to 40,000-50,000 on NPSP, because it's been out for 15 plus years, right? So makes sense, has to start somewhere, right? Rob, where's, as with Idealist Consulting, you're doing enterprise level implementations, right? And variety of sizes. And where are you all at with all of this?
Well, I want to pause just for a second. I think, Mark, the notion that you're bringing up the state of Salesforce, right? I think we've got to look at all three elements, which is, the product, the company, and the culture. And each of those have their own sort of futures in store. We're talking about the product right now, which I think dovetails pretty strongly with the culture. And that is one of the reasons why we tend to be, I think, preoccupied maybe with MPC. When I look at MPC just from a product perspective, and I hope we get a chance to talk about the company and culture as well, what I see is a solution that is following a very similar path to, say, SAP or Oracle. And there's an architectural shift that's happening in MPC that really is more conducive to an ERP experience, which, as we all know, ERP can be a very challenging deployment experience. It's all inclusive, but the architecture is likely going to be a lot more have a much better connection with, say, accounting solutions. So, the way we're looking at MPC is that it's really teeing itself up well for high mid-market and enterprise. But that also leaves a little bit of question marks regarding lower mid-market and what Salesforce refers to as GRB, which is a lot of the entry-level nonprofits. By and large, MPC is supposed to reach feature parity to NPSP. I think they're targeting for summer, which, when you think about it, Mark, you had talked about a 15-year development path,
Right.
which Idealist has walked hand in hand with Salesforce on the MPSP rather deployment over that time. And they've been able to get feature parity, at least we'll see, but in less than 3 years, which is pretty incredible. If they're able to maintain that velocity, there's really, it's looking pretty positive. I think the part that is kind of left for question marks is how approachable will the solution be will it be as accessible to that accidental admin when it reaches that feature parity? And the questions are out there still, I think. So hopefully that gives you kind of our perspective on the solution.
Oh, I like it. Well said. It's well said. Daniel, what's going on over at Canvas Cloud? And what are you all thinking and seeing?
Yeah, I think I would say that I think Rob has definitely got a great insight there. Nonprofit Success Pack, and again, through its many iterations, so it wasn't always there, but I think for a handful of years, Nonprofit Success Pack was talked about as you could start with an out-of-box solution and really grow from it, and Nonprofit Cloud is not that. I think that Nonprofit Cloud has some definitely positive momentum towards future, and I think as implementers, we can see the benefits, but there isn't really a easy option for nonprofits to turn on Nonprofit Cloud and not have somebody else helping them to be able to make it be a successful product, at least at this point. Again, obviously, Nonprofit Success Pack took quite a while to get there, but I would say that I don't see that path. So I definitely agree with Rob in regards to, it seems like this is a product that definitely is moving the momentum towards we'll call it upper echelon of nonprofits, with I think, again, the importance of organizations like ours all being part of the conversation on how do the other huge majority of nonprofits participate in this new Nonprofit Cloud product. So, we have done implementations. We are one of, I guess, those 17 surveyed that Watt talked about that have had a successful implementation and a go live. And I do think that there are some lanes for smaller nonprofits to be very successful in the tool. However, I do think that it's definitely a push from Salesforce to kind of move in that upstream momentum.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Matt, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so from a Cathexis standpoint, we're a much smaller shop, I believe, than a lot of other partners that are implementing NPSP, Nonprofit Cloud. I myself, for example, have been solo for the greater part of 10 years, not only implementing and deploying NPSP, but also continuing to support nonprofit organizations. And the majority of organizations that we work with are those much smaller organizations that have the 10 free licenses or less. Maybe you've got a few admins, a few users, and that's it. We've seen a lot about NPC. Is it sort of like the future, right? Is it the goal? Is it the place that I think Salesforce from a nonprofit perspective ends up, and as it continues to grow, I think it will be. When I think about the state of Salesforce for nonprofits right now, and specifically in the conversations that I've had with the different smaller organizations, it's kind of status quo right now. Organizations are extremely happy with the tool and the product that's available to them. Coming from other platforms, that I won't mention, Salesforce has been head over heels less expensive. NPSP specifically has been a less expensive, and just a greater utility overall for what some of these organizations are looking for. Perhaps in the future, NPSP, becomes the true go-to. But when I think about the nonprofits that we're working with right now, they know that perhaps there's another option out there, maybe in time, But at this time, it's just that, we're happy with what we've got. And we're happy, with the direction that Salesforce has gone so far.
And we do even have a few, larger clients at kind of the enterprise level that are on NPSP, and I don't think they feel like any urge or need to move. Right, and I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding around. So it's yeah, there's got to be a reason, but it's an interesting time for those folks. Like I'm working with a large organization right now that's looking at different solutions, and it's an interesting time because for an enterprise level, organization looking for that full solution, they're going to customize anyways, right? Even if they had NPSP, it's not like they're going to open the box and yay, they're going to customize anyways. So why not NPC at this time? Because it's going to be a lot of custom work done for their specific needs anyways.
Mark, I think about how folks are approaching Salesforce right now, and they tend to read history backward. In other words, when NPSP came out, Nonprofit Starter Pack, there was folks couldn't do their deployment work then, right? Idealist was doing their deployment work for them, walking them through it. And there was a reason for that, was because the technology was way ahead of its time when it was released for nonprofits, most specifically. And I have a suspicion we're going to see a lot of a similar journey with MPC. We're going to see a lot of, it's going to be easier on the user. I think the user interface is going to be more approachable. I think the capacity of being able to integrate with multiple clouds, I think, is going to be very advantageous. And initially, there's going to be the same sort of adoption curve that we saw with NPSP. It's just we're 20 years in the future now. So it's hard to, like I said, it's hard not to read history backward, but it's good to keep in mind that this journey isn't all that unfamiliar.
Good point.
Yeah. And I just like to echo that, because I do think, to the extent that Nonprofit Cloud is able to achieve the same level of adoption and impact in the nonprofit sector, it's going to be because the community gets behind it and takes it in that direction. I mean, I think, even before there was any solution for nonprofits on Salesforce, when it was just a sales CRM, there were pioneering nonprofits and pioneering consultants, Rob is among them, who said, we think this tool could really do a lot for nonprofits. And they got in there and they figured it out, and they figured out how to make opportunities work for donations. And so I think that's always been the special sauce of the Salesforce for nonprofits, is the community. And so that's why I'm really eager to look at what partners are doing, as well as what citizen evangelists, MVPs, admins are doing inside of their organizations to embrace this tool and whip it into shape for what their organizations need.
Well, and I think it's also a great thing to point out. And I mean, again, we all talk about the high number, but it's like there's 1.5 million nonprofits in the United States. I mean, even of the 35,000 to 50,000 that were on Nonprofit Success Pack, I mean, there's still a lot of different interests, and other technologies are changing and moving as well. I think, excuse me, the reality of where we're headed with Salesforce, and I mean, I think this maybe ties back into Rob's culture conversation as well, is the reality is, at least, I don't know if it was the full year, but moving forward, every single nonprofit conversation at Salesforce is move into Nonprofit Cloud. That is definitely something that, we are seeing as an organization as a lot more net new in people joining and coming onto Nonprofit Cloud. I think that, organizations like us are very, very important to help drive that success. And there has been success stories, and I mean, that's a very positive thing. But I also think that, the reality is that, even if we want to give them an option to move into nonprofit success pack, I think that option in the future for new organizations wanting to join Salesforce is that window is closing very quickly.
And as that feature parity, kind of levels out, right? Then that makes it more interesting for all involved, and I think that opens it up, right? But I think we're going to I'd like to get to the company and the culture here in a second. To Rob's point, I think that's all really important. But there's definitely, I think one thing we haven't outright said yet is there's no clear migration path from NPSP to NPC, right? And it seems like Salesforce is very eager to find one, or have consultants help with that. There probably will come a time, especially once parity, is there, that it might become a bit clearer. But anybody have any thoughts about the kind of the migration path or reason to migrate at this point?
Every time we have seen this experience, there has been a desire for a clear migration process that's plug and play and can just pop people over. That has just never really occurred. I think what's happened, and regardless of what Salesforce org you're migrating from or to, Common Ground, MPSP, AffiniQuest, Patron Manager, NGOC. I mean, the list is long, and in every case, there is a migration experience. And the truth that I have come to recognize is that the migration experience accelerates as people learn how to get more efficient at navigating the data mapping. NGOC was a good example of that. I think, we got to a place, Idealist got to a place where we were able to really move very quickly. We did a migration of over 30 million records, and we were able to get that done in a pretty challenging environment. And it's just goes to show that the SIs get it, they get it figured out, but it's never, it's not a cookie cutter experience. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of that. There might be some solutions that accelerate the experience, but by and large, you really need an SI to do it effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Let's talk briefly about the company and the culture. I know, Rob, you had brought that up. Anything you want to start that one off?
Well, I think the culture is probably the most complex of the three when you talk about product, company, and culture. The company component, what strikes me as interesting is that Salesforce.org started as a nonprofit. We all know that. And it then moved to a corporate environment, ultimately being moved under public sector, which some people would say that's a nice fit. Others folks might go, well, that's a little peculiar for the nonprofit space to be under the public sector. Whatever the case, there's been some significant shifts that have happened in the company that SIs have had to account for. Some of those are attributed to the layoffs that have happened. Others is the mild reorg that's been experienced there. But the ultimate outcome has been interesting. So I used to give a presentation with Salesforce, which we referred to as friction points between basically Salesforce and SIs, and how they have to work together in order to get nonprofits ultimately their licensing and their deployment. And during that time, there's sort of the SI is showing up, trying to focus on getting their deployment done. Salesforce is showing up, ensuring that they get the right license package, hopefully. And the two that created some mild friction, which ultimately ended up well for the nonprofit, right? They don't end up overpaying for each. The shift that I've noticed that's happened is that Salesforce is working with a smaller sales team, and they're leaning into the SIs more for counsel during the sales cycle, which is more reflective of what we saw back in, say, 2007, 2008. And ultimately, I think that is a net positive, not only for SIs, but I do think it's helpful to show up with a solution first approach with nonprofits, because that's ultimately they're looking to solve pain points. than to show up too strong on too hyper focused on the tech. They're looking for change management, that sort of thing. So I've seen a lot of changes in the sales posture, which has made it, I think, a faster and a more approachable sales cycle overall. And it's been positive.
Like it, and I've had the honor of being able to see you in action, and your approach to implementations, and really thinking that thoughtful, phase zero, consideration of, okay, let's step back and look at everything, and we'll look at other phases. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done here, but we don't know what those other phases are until we talk about, what the foundation is, right? You got to plow the field first.
Yeah, 100%. And Mark, I think that's something that Salesforce has been giving space for, a discussion
That's
that
great.
they've been ready to give space for. So it's that, and it wasn't always that way. So I think there's been some really net positives. Some of the challenges, obviously, are, the shift in the company has made it more challenging. We've got to navigate a new lay of the land, and that's always tricky, no matter who you're working with.
Anybody else have any other thoughts on the company or the culture at Salesforce?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the general audience, I think I'd like to throw in just an interesting feedback that I think is very, very helpful for partners. But as a partner in the nonprofit ecosystem, we all have the ability to join on monthly calls with Salesforce, and kind of get updates and understand and hear what's happening with Nonprofit Cloud. And so it's not like we're walking blindly. I mean, we do have some guidance, and I would say that actually the communication has been really helpful and good. And again, probably the reason we're all in this space is because we love technology and we love the pace of change, and change happens all the time. And so if anyone is armed and prepared to, make change, Salesforce has gone through tremendous change in the last, year plus. Well, this all has happened. And yet, again, going back to the conversation and summing it up, they also have gotten close to parity from a tool that's been around for 15 plus years. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I think that Salesforce is very much still dedicated to the space, but I definitely do think that the public sector transition of where Salesforce and the .org kind of sit is new. And I think that I would say, and probably Rob would agree, that as SIs, like, that's still yet for all of us to learn and navigate. And that means all of us learning and navigating new relationships internally in Salesforce as well. But I do think that there's some positive conversations. And actually, I feel like this is actually, one of those moments where they're really looking towards SIs to for guidance. And I think that's a really positive thing. That's a very positive shift, I think, in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, again, just going back to our general topic, right? What is the state of Salesforce for nonprofits? And I think that, just in general, the future is bright for sure. For existing organizations, there's a lot of status quo, and there's a lot of possibility and a lot of option for what, Salesforce is bringing to the table and continues to enhance on it and build out for, the 30,000+ organizations that are currently using it. I think it's just an exciting place to be right now as an implementer, somebody who's working with organizations in day to day. It's just a good place to be right now.
Awesome. Rob, any other final advice or tips or thoughts?
I'm going to be curious to see what happens to the Trailblazer community and how they embrace MPC. There was this, when we began this journey as SIs, really we started from the place of bridging the digital divide, and it really wasn't about Salesforce. And Salesforce did something I think was really beneficial to the community. They kind of saw that digital divide parade and they got in front of it. And folks lined up behind the solution largely because it was a community built solution. And Salesforce has done, I think, a pretty clever job engaging the community in MPC. But the Trailblazer community is going to have there's going to be more to this solution, and they're going to have to contribute more of their time to really get behind the what I think will be an enterprise level feature set. And it'll be interesting to see how that all develops. But ultimately, they are, I think I hope folks start to see is that we're still all in this for those reasons of bridging the digital divide. And Salesforce has certainly led that charge. And my hope is we continue to stay in front like that, because it's been very positive for the industry. When I look at where we were 20 years ago and where we are now, I mean, we're talking about an enterprise level ERP capability that could be accessible to small nonprofits. That's a huge, huge shift from where we were 20 years ago, which was, can you adopt a CRM? So I'm hopeful, and I think the Trailblazer community is going to be a big part of that. So I'm curious to see how that ends up.
Great. Before I hand it off and wrap up with Watt, Daniel, any other final thoughts in addition to what you shared?
Yeah, I think, be positive. I mean, as organizations or people that are out there listening, I mean, don't be afraid to lean into Nonprofit Cloud, because it really is an powerful tool set. But I also do think, I mean, even the people on this podcast, decades and decades of experience, make sure you're reaching out and talking to those in the community that are invested and know kind of the relationships that have happened, and can lean into this space, because Nonprofit Cloud still is new. It's really it is going to be and can be an extremely powerful tool. But I also think that the experts need to be a part of a conversation, whether or not they're helping you set up. But I think it's worthwhile to have conversations like this. So thank you, Mark, for bringing us together, because this is a great conversation and I mean, really valuable time in the, I guess, the history of nonprofit and Salesforce.
Yeah, no, thanks for everybody's time here. And Watt, definitely want you to have the final word, since you came out with all this great info that kind of spirited the conversation in the first place. Would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I think one thing we haven't mentioned explicitly is that part of the intention of the new Nonprofit Cloud is to align it more closely with how Salesforce operates in other industry verticals. And I see that as a very positive sign, because I think it provides a more assured path forward for Salesforce in the nonprofit sector, especially when you consider, as Rob mentioned, that the resources, the people who have been around at Salesforce.org, that team has gotten a lot smaller. So there aren't as many people inside of Salesforce, relatively speaking, as there used to be, dedicated to the sector. But now that the product is on this kind of common industry path, I don't think there necessarily need to be as many people, but it is going to put more importance again on consulting partners, on leaders within nonprofit organizations and within the community, to chart the course and to continue to make sure that this technology is accessible and relevant and working for nonprofit organizations. There are more consulting partners aligned to nonprofits than there have ever been. So I think that's also very good news, that there are a lot of folks out there dedicated to this sector and this technology. So I think, for that reason, I have reason to be optimistic that Salesforce will continue to be viable, whether it's NPC or a combination of NPC and NPSP, for many years to come.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for your time. Thanks everybody for listening. I think this is a great conversation. The survey came out at a really interesting time, and it continues to evolve as we should, right? Technology is always evolving, and this continues. So thanks everybody for your time today, and talk again soon.
Thanks for listening. Listen to more episodes at nonprofitpro.com as well as on Apple, Google, and Spotify.